am a wife and a mother and an insurance agency owner, a friend, and a PTA advocate. I am so excited to talk about all of the things that I find most precious here within our community, within our lives, and within our faith, friendships, and relationships. Here on Heather's Most Precious. So tell me about Amada's.
Okay, so we are a tapas restaurant located on the south side district of Chattanooga, and this is my 14-month baby. You know how when someone has a child and the baby's like a year and a half, but we're still saying how many months it is because it's still new to me. So yeah, we've been open a little bit over a year, and we do tapas. So tapas are small plates. The menu is comprised of about 25 small plates, which I always describe tapas as like, it's a way of eating where you can try multiple things. Like, we're not all about like just going in and getting like your basic side salad and an entree. Like, we want you to share it with everybody at the table. And tapas originated in Spain, so it's a Spanish influenced restaurant, okay, which is different, and it's definitely a niche that isn't filled in Chattanooga. We didn't have any other tapas restaurants at the time when Amada opened, so that's kind of what I was trying to do, is bring a different dining experience to this like up and coming new age of restaurants that the Chattanooga food scene is starting to promote. And so I'm excited to like be a part of that new wave. And so that's what we're doing here.
That's awesome. Yeah. Is it everything that you thought it would be when you initially opened?
Oh yeah. I think when you start a new business, you are ultimately sacrificing like a part of you to pour it into this, because like that's part of it. And the brand itself like is, I think, a reflection of me. And so I think like if you're not here, then it's going to be obvious that it's a ship without a captain. I think I knew it was going to be a sacrifice, but then like once you get into it and you're like a couple months in, you're like, wow, I'm really tired. It's like I'm in the process of finding that like work-life balance right now. I think
hard.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think just the team aspect of it is so important, and surrounding yourself with a great team that like respects you and like your personal life too, like that everybody's really supportive. Like if somebody wants to take a trip, then we're gonna adjust to make sure that we've got that person covered, and they do the same thing for me. And and I think that everybody enjoys coming to work here. So I think what I underestimated was the people management side of the job. That is like, it's fun to make good food, and it's fun to make good drinks and to express creative freedom in a menu. But the people part of things can be really difficult, and being an empathetic leader is important, and understanding that like this might be my dream, but it's not other people's dream. And so like, respecting like their life doesn't have to be this restaurant, but when they do walk in the door, they are here to promote the brand, and everybody's excited about it. And
so you want them to buy in.
Even exactly.
Though they are not ever going to have the same investment that you do, but you do expect that. And I'm sure in a restaurant like this, everyone becomes family.
100%.
That's really cool. Well, y'all are hearing from Amanda Trotter, the owner of Amada's Tapas here in Chattanooga, and what a joy it is to be here in your restaurant.
It is a really, really lovely place to show up and work at. It's really, really cool. I have my office in the back is really pink. Yeah.
So we like bubblegum pink?
We're like bubblegum pink.
Okay.
Yeah. I got the pink velvet chair, pink desktop, like matte, and
it's bright and cheery.
I've always said pink is not a color, it's a lifestyle.
Oh, 100%. Barbie would agree, right?
Exactly.
That is awesome. Well, talk to us about just the style here. As we look around there, potted plants, you have greenery, you have ivy hanging, the colors itself on the table within the glasses alone. Yeah. Tell us what, kind of how you got here. What was the dream of the style to this moment?
So I knew I was getting into a type of cuisine that isn't popular in Chattanooga. And we've had a tapas restaurant in town before, and now we don't. And so I was entering a different world that is not pizza, burger, taco. And so you have to really do things that stand out and can be, if we're going to be different, how different, and how can it be a positive thing that will draw people in. And so the name itself, so Amada is my name in Latin, and it means lovable woman. Oh. So that's kind of where the mural on the wall, Our Lady in the back, so that's kind of where that was inspired from. Is just like I wanted to promote that as something that I could brand around. And so then off of that kind of came like colors and like where do I want to take the color wheel necessarily. And like I've always loved, I think a deep purple like / plum is a beautiful color that kind of can promote hunger. It makes me think of wine. It makes me think of like royalty and just kind of just an over the top kind of thing. And so without being over the top, that's kind of where the design started. And so like looking at exactly what do we want the space to provide to people. So I think like a rule of thumb for me was anything that somebody can touch. If you're going to be in the restaurant, like if I'm promoting this like ultimate date night, like perfect dining experience, or just something different than your normal dining experience, how does the design come into play with that? And so, I think like that's the rule is like, if they touch it, like, how's it going to be awesome, or how's it going to be different? So, I think with the water glasses, I was mentioning this to you earlier. Yeah. A lot of people will come in and say, oh my gosh, my grandmother had those at her house. And that kind of brings on that nostalgia, and that immediately just kind of like triggers this like different experience. Something's different. The chairs are from Italy. They're awesome, and they are big butt friendly. Yes, we love. Yeah, all of the banquettes. Everything's mobile. The entire dining room can be transformed into all these different spaces. And so like that's kind of been like coming out of year one, like private dining experiences for large groups is something that like I'm really passionate about. And we've done a lot of wedding related things, but also like tomorrow I have a construction group that's coming in and has bought the place out, and we're doing a full like 5-course menu for them. But yeah, it's really like, if it is a private event, it can be transformed to cater to that group's needs and wants. And then during our regular dining service, it promotes the experience that we're trying to sell. So, I think as far as, so I talked about the seating, and I talked about the water glasses, and all of these colors, it's very vibrant. And we spoke about the plants that are hanging in the windows. Which shout out to them, that's Plant Keepers. So my friend Dan Hagler and his sister Laura have a company in town.
It's amazing.
And love them. They're great. They keep them looking luscious and beautiful. And I have people all the time asking if they can cut a vine off and take it home.
Right.
Yeah, which sometimes I'm like, yeah, sure, here's a pair of scissors. Yeah. But the colors translate into the food. I think that there's a harmony with my plating style. And so a lot of our sauces are very vibrant and green and orange, and we don't shy away from playing with colors with the food as well. And so I think all of those things combined to create this like visual experience. And with food, if you see a beautiful color pop and play, your first instinct is to think, oh, okay, well, that looks good.
Right.
Before you've even tasted it. And then I feel like we don't disappoint with the taste either. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
It is amazing how much the visual, the sound, everything, the light, everything can be that premeditated bite, right?
Yeah.
To where you get that.
Exactly.
And it's all a part of the process.
Yeah.
Which is a big deal. And you have thought of everything here.
I try.
I love that you're talking about how everything is mobile to where as parties come in, there's probably even ways that you could rearrange this room that y'all might not have already done before because it has to be endless, right?
Yes. Yeah. I would say like we've done quite a few different layouts. My favorite is when we'll take this entire row out and you have like an open bar area, and we've done like champagne station at the front. So when you come in, you get a welcome glass of bubbles, and there's all these different like ways to transform it. We have in February, we're doing a Galentine's Day event. It'll be the Thursday before Valentine's Day. And we're planning on having like roses hung from the ceiling. And we got a cotton candy station and custom cocktails.
Like the Dream Girls Night.
Oh, it's going to be the Dream Girls Night. Exactly. And what better place to do it than the place that means lovable woman.
Of course. And we're definitely going to be posting pictures because this is gorgeous. Now, I know y'all are typically open in the evenings. Does that change over the weekend? Or are you only open certain days?
So the only day we're closed right now is Monday. And so our hours are Tuesday through Sunday. We open at 5 p.m. As we get into the holiday season, and definitely thinking about on New Year's, we'll probably do some extended hours just to do like a ball drop countdown.
Yeah.
And then around Valentine's Day, I usually will pull back our time to open at 4 o'clock so we can get some early dinners. And tapas, like in Spain, it is meant for you to have like 2 small bites and then you go to the next tapas restaurant and the next one and next one. So I feel like on New Year's, we try to get as many people in as we possibly can. And like, we just want to be one of your stops for the night. So that's kind of the game plan, is to promote this. Just I want to be everybody's pregame. for the new year.
I love that it's really a cuisine hopper is how it is created to be. And for you to be able to implement that here, where, as you've alluded to, we are very much the pizza burger joint town, which we are slowly becoming more ethical when it comes to food, which is a beautiful thing. You're bringing in so many pieces of the culture that are lovely, and just the sharing atmosphere instead of to each their own. I love that. Now, this probably wasn't always the dream for you, having a restaurant.
Yes, yeah.
Well, what was the initial dream?
So the initial dream was, so I have a biology degree and a chemistry minor, and I finished up school and decided that at that moment I was going to go for pre-med. That was the game plan. So I moved to Atlanta. I got a really, really awesome job, just beginning my field in medicine. Got a job at a toxicology lab at Emory University.
Wow.
And I moved to Atlanta before I got the job. And so I was living in Smyrna, but working in Decatur. If you've ever been to Atlanta, you know all about the traffic. I was living in my car. But it was really, really a cool experience. And I got to be a part of a lot of women-focused studies. And so like I've always been really into like women's medicine, or just like learning about the woman's body in general. And so that kind of was pushing me into like the route of like gynecology. And I was doing all this job shadowing and really, really getting up and personal with the women's business.
Sure.
Yeah. And I just eventually, after a year of it, I started to realize that like going back to school was something that was going to take a lot of sacrifice. And I was at the time 22 years old and was getting an itch for like, I just started having all these ideas all the time. Like I was obsessed with Shark Tank. And and I had like this idea for a board game and an idea for this, and just started to kind of realize like this there was this like other side of me that like recognized passion, like I guess within, like you would call it an entrepreneurial spirit.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like that like bug was starting to hit me. And so I ended up quitting my job, moved back to Chattanooga. At the time, my grandmother was getting sick and my whole family was up in Chattanooga. I'm originally from Ringgold. So I was down in Atlanta. I didn't have any family down there. And it was getting to the point where like everything was pulling me back up to this town. And I missed it bad. So I get into food and beverage. So as one does when they jump careers, they start dating a guy.
Right.
And yeah, so I started working in helping open this new restaurant that at the time, like all it had was a name. And like we knew we were going to do New York style pizza, but I did not have any experience in that world. I knew I went out to eat a lot growing up. Neither one of my parents were really big, like in the kitchen.
Right.
I grew up going out to eat.
Okay.
And so I had like an idea, like an expectation that I wanted to set like for the business and like my part in it. And so I was helping with front of house management. And so we get the place open. We opened up October of 2018, which is the same year that I got married, and started Pizza Bros. So I worked at Pizza Bros North Shore for 3 years. And then the month that I put in the notice and left, I split up with my ex-husband and then started this concept like immediately. It was all about the dining experience. I went to Nashville, I went to Knoxville, I went to Atlanta, and I call it a divorce tour.
Yeah. Just immersed yourself into
I was
it.
like, I have to get obsessed about something. I have to get my mind focused on something. And I had thought about getting into the wedding space, but then COVID hit, and my mom and I had talked about going into business together, like before I had left Pizza Bros. And that was kind of the dream, is like, are we going to do a wedding venue? Well, 2020 happened, weddings were changing, and that was a world
Almost
that
non-existent,
yes,
right?
exactly. And that was a world that I didn't understand, but I did understand restaurants. So yeah, I immerse myself in the larger cities around us, and I was just kind of picking like, okay, what are they doing in Nashville? You know, I see the rooftop bars, like that's really cool. I see this, I see that, I see tapas. I've got 10 tapas restaurants to choose from. And I'm like, and we don't have one. Go to Knoxville, they have a couple. Go to Atlanta, they have a ton.
Right.
So it was kind of, I guess, Chattanooga's, I probably was jumping the gun and going in with 2 feet. And I just had an idea, like if I can educate people and pay my dues to the culture in Spain, but also translate it into a way that Chattanooga understands it, which I had a commitment to do so. That was kind of where it started. And so my mom and I went into business together. And a year after leaving Pizza Bros, I opened Amada. And so it was like quick. I mean, I immediately started shopping and looking at things to bring inspiration into the dining room. And the location was difficult. It was hard to find out like where to put it. What would work.
Location is almost everything and making you successful as well,
yes,
right?
Like branding and logo is one aspect of it, but location is so important. And especially for a new brand, like if you're on your second or third endeavor, you've already established. So it was like life or death kind of thing for a business. So I really wanted to be close to Main Street, and I looked at several places, and this was the spot that was just yelling. It was one of those like you hold your breath when you walk in kind of thing. Yeah. And it was all gravel. All it was a couple of columns. Okay. And I just was like, okay, I can see bar, I can see kitchen right here. And it just started, I could see the bones. And so, we pulled the trigger on it, and I'm happy with our spot. The people across the street at 1400 Chestnut Street Apartments have been very, very good to us and have accepted us as their neighborhood spot. So, yeah.
Well, and all of the lighting that comes in here too.
It's
amazing.
Very beautiful at night.
Right?
Yeah.
That is awesome. Now, do you feel like people typically are, I know you've mentioned across the street, but do you feel like people are traveling now that the word is out? You're now 14 months old. And do you feel like the word is traveling to where people are coming?
I think I find it interesting, like when I talk to the servers, like they'll say, I'll just kind of ask at the end of the night, like, hey, did you have any reoccurring visitors tonight, or was it first time? And I think from the summertime, like up until like October around Halloween, we were hearing it every single night. Like it was like 80% of people, this was their first time.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think like that's kind of my goal for the next couple of months for us, is to do a deep dive into marketing and kind of figure out like, how do I get this word of mouth to catch like wildfire?
Yeah.
And and I haven't put a lot of effort into marketing because, you know, it's especially when you're trying to pay off the build out and all that. It's tough, and you gotta
and balance and all of it.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. So I think if I had to say, probably 30% of Chattanooga knows we exist. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's so much room to grow, and so that's kind of hopefully within the next couple months I can make it more of a household name in the city. Yeah. That's the goal.
Well, and especially with you doing really cool marketing things like your Valentine's night. Yes. And I know like tonight you're partnered with your boutique next door to do a really cool event. So doing those two will definitely bring the awareness, which is a neat thing, especially with the events. And what's really neat is you'd mentioned you and your mother wanting to potentially do wedding planning, wedding events. But now you have a space where you get the best of both worlds.
That was kind of like where both of us putting our heads together in the design. I think I always envisioned it being like so much more than just a restaurant. And I love the restaurant aspect of it, but I love being able to transform the space into it just depends on who it is that's looking to book it. So we've done something really cool that we did very recently, was partnered with the Literary Alliance in Chattanooga. And so we had like basically a book and wine pairing, and just had like a huge charcuterie board up on the bar. But like that was something so outside of like regular dinner service. And like, so I love doing like stuff like that. And it also keeps it interesting and, and gets away from the monotonous, every day, never changing kind of like dinner service can be. This restaurant is tough. And I always joke that it's sucking my youth from me, but like the events, they bring me life.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's awesome. I love that. What, I know you talked about through the divorce, through finding kind of what you wanted to do here was, and you immersed yourself, so there was challenge there. Was it that obviously had to have been a difficult season for you?
Yes.
The switch. Did immersing yourself make it better, or are there still moments that miss what you played a huge part of building there?
Yeah, I think I contribute that experience to almost like restaurant university.
Okay.
And I learned a lot of what year 1, year 2, and what the difference between year 1 and year 3 looks like, because they are very, very different. And I got to learn more about the way this city thinks, and the way this city as consumers, how do they spend their money? And it helped me to decide to make decisions for this place. Like, what did I want this brand to do? And, did I want to be the lunch place? No, not really, And so I think as far as like making that big jump, there is this fight or flight mode that the brain does. And that's exactly what happened. And I had to buy a new house. I had to get a new job.
Yeah.
And also kind of trying to work through the loss of that relationship. And all of those things, like the best thing for me to do in that moment was to focus on something that was mine, because there were so many things that now they weren't mine. And so I think that's kind of like why I went into the I guess, world of starting a business. And like, that's scary enough, even if you are very established. So I'm so blessed. And probably don't shout them out enough, but my two parents, who are both their mindset is very that entrepreneurial spirit. And my dad opened up his first business when he was 26. He started a lawn care company in Ackworth, and my mom was a part of that.
Okay.
And now they have gotten into rental properties, and they own their own LLC and are working on a triplex right now. And so like they've always had these things that they've done together. And so I think like when I came to them with this concept, it was not an easy sell. Right. We're from Ringgold, and my dad was like, no one knows what tapas are. Right. And I'm like, yeah, but there are some people that do. Right. Like, yes. And I'm like, I'm all for like educating people on it. And so I think like very, very blessed that I had those two people to like, not only did I not want to disappoint them, but like more on the side of like, let me make you proud. And and it was definitely a huge thing to like get them to give me some backing on it. And it wasn't just like right off the rip either. There was some push and pull. So luckily I was able to kind of PowerPoint presentation it, and I'm like, I promise, and here's my business plan, and these are the profits that I'm expecting. And so I like it. I'm really feel like the luckiest girl in the world sometimes. That just to have, it's nice to have those two people that can support you, especially at such a pivotal moment where like I needed something sound
more than anything, right?
Yeah.
In that moment. And I think, it's kind of in your blood then. If they had that entrepreneurial spirit, that they were so you saw that was not foreign. But I think that there's also a beauty in you taking what should have been probably the worst part for you and turning that into something beautiful with the support of your family and with the dream that you were also able to stand up for yourself. And that's a beautiful thing. I think so many people, especially women, when things happen, sometimes it's easy to shut down. It's easy to not be able to move forward or not know what's next, or just feel like, oh my goodness, and something else will happen again. I think there's always that fear. How would you advise for someone who is, whether it is a divorce, whether it is an accident with a physical ailment, anything that is life-changing for them, what are the first steps that you would advise them to take in order to find healing and move forward?
That's a fantastic question. I think good habits are really, really important. And that's something like being on a very like strict schedule is something that's really, really hard for me personally. And so finding ways to continuously practice good habits in a way that like promotes like positive like mindset. And so like whether that be like I'm going to consistently get up at this time every day, or I'm going to make sure that I'm working out 4 days a week, or like just all these like little things. I'm going to make sure that I'm not staying up past midnight, like sleep's important, and just like the stuff that like actually just comes down to like living is if you can do all of those little things and continue like a pattern, I feel like the trajectory is going to be positive rather than like, so that's kind of what I did is like, it was tough because there was a little lull period of like moving out of my house and renting for a second before I was able to purchase a home. And that little like couple of months was like very difficult, very difficult. Definitely found whiskey.
Good for you.
And I think that's natural to like, I think it's okay to like sit in it for a second. Like that's also very healthy too. So I definitely like did that for a minute, but at some point in time, there's a fire, that's like, I got to prove myself. I got to prove to myself. I got to prove to anybody who's watching, and leaning on all the people around you, all family, friends, or friends that are like family. Right. Like that was everything to just establish like all of the relationships that I've ever had, just to like check in with people and like obviously, like when something goes, in your life, like you want it, I think it's very healthy to talk about it as much as possible. Oh my gosh, if I haven't mentioned it yet, I'm a huge advocate for therapy.
Yeah.
Love therapy. And
you have to be able to talk process, right? In order to hear.
Exactly. That is exactly how my brain works. So I just tried to, alone time is important too, but I also like made sure that I wasn't like going to go silent and sit in it for too long. And so,
or completely secluding.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm definitely the type of person that like, I have so many like good relationships like around me with friends and with employees and with my family that like I was so rich in love, even though I was going through like that like loss, that it was something to just like fall back on for a second and feel like I had a net under me. And so I think sometimes, especially like specifically with divorces, like you might find, for me, I didn't have children, but in some relationships, especially if they're a toxic relationship, you can find yourself secluded with only your partner. And so when you are out of it, you might have to put in work to build relationships back up to like a healthy standpoint with some people. And I think I had to do a little bit of that. Yeah, for sure. I think that's kind of my answer to the question is like making sure that you are healthy about realizing like reality and sitting in it and having a little cry sesh is totally okay.
Absolutely. And therapeutic, right?
Yeah, exactly. Get in therapy and build relationships in other areas of your life. It doesn't have to always be it doesn't have to be a spouse or a partnership like that. Like you can be rich in love in all other areas.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's amazing. Sometimes you don't realize what your community looks like until something devastating happens.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. I think most people have more people than they anticipate.
Yes.
And surrounding them. And that is huge. Having people that you can count on, that you can talk with, that can help build you up when you do not have the stamina or the strength to do it for yourself that day, right? Or to dream big with, even if it's your parents, right?
Yeah.
And what a beautiful thing when with my agency, my parents coming alongside and always being kind of the backbone behind the scenes. It's always so encouraging that you get to share that together. That is one of those core memories, right?
Yes.
It's always going to have. And need to have such a good relationship that you want to do business with your family. I realize often how blessed I am in that not only do I have the support, but that I like them enough. And they like me enough.
And my brother works in the kitchen with me. And he's my sous chef. And that has just turned into like my partner in crime. And he's a huge part of the reason why like I get that life-work balance sometimes. And like we're the type of like coworkers that can look at each other and say, hey, I'm showing 20%. Like, can you cover me? And it's like, yeah, I got you. Don't worry. But I don't want to be here on Sunday. And I'm like, okay, I got you. I can be 100 on Sunday. Yeah. So it's definitely not something that I take for granted, being able to work with my family, because like, that's who I was put into the world with. Absolutely. So and it's not always sunshine and rainbows, but
right. I mean, nothing good is. Nothing good is. Now, we talked about your going to school, and obviously in super easy the studies that you were doing with biology and chemistry. I want to touch base on the fact that I think so often we are pushed right after high school. You go to college, you figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life, and like that's it. And then sometimes I think some people this is great for, but I think sometimes we miss the point, and maybe children or young students feel forced into a pathway. So when something happens and they have a 4-year-old crisis, or they have a 22-year-old, you have graduated, you think you're going one direction, but all of a sudden these dreams are coming, you're brainstorming, you have this entrepreneurial spirit that is wanting to come forth, right? And it may feel wrong, but yet there's something so beautiful about that. Yeah. What would you tell people that are in that boat, that feel like they've done something and they have to do it because that's what they have to follow through with whatever they said they were going to do, whether they have just started or whether they're 35 years old?
Oh my gosh, yeah. You are never too young or too old to start over. And I think failure can be a beautiful thing. And also sometimes what we deem as failure actually isn't. It may just look like that from your perspective at that time. So I'm big on perspective. I think as far as the age of getting out of high school, I think it's really important I think a gap year can be a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Like taking time, if you talk to people who are a little bit older, I'm talking like 60s and up, they will always tell you like travel while you're young.
Right.
Like I think that if you have the means to do that, I think travel can be a way to gain a perspective that you just getting out of your hometown, you might get a different perspective and see other ways of the world and other cultures, other foods, other businesses, and things like that just kind of like can spark creativity and like you can find a passion in something that you maybe would have never even known existed.
Yeah.
So I think travel was a little bit of medicine, like for me, as far as that, what am I going to do next now that I've decided to jump head first and get out of this career? And I didn't close the door like immediately. There were moments where I was like, all right, I might go get my master's. Like maybe I do want to get into public health. And I even thought for a second, like, what if I got into the industry of health inspections? Like, because I already have a little bit of, food background and I also have this biology degree. And like, I feel like you're just trying to figure it out and plug in all these experiences that you may have had in your life. Like, how do I pull from these experiences, things that I enjoyed? And so I think, again, you might enjoy something for a certain length of time, and then it might be time to close the door and open a new one. So, and that doesn't have to be labeled like as failure. So, yeah, I think that's how I would look at it. Yeah, is try and gain a different perspective. Yeah,
absolutely. And like you said, through different seasons.
Yeah,
doesn't mean you're closing the door all the way. You can come back. But
exactly.
It doesn't mean that just because you gave 3 or 4 years to study something that you didn't get anything out of it, even though you may not be in that career that you thought you would be in.
I think I still pull from some of my 4 years of college. I played volleyball all 4 years, and so like that team mentality translates directly to my staff, and then there are certain sides of my science background that do plug into cooking. Cooking is definitely science. Yeah. So and there are different elements that like I really, really enjoy about a dining experience, as far as like a food pairing, and you want to pair something that tastes like this, and like the wine needs to be a little more acidic, and like that is exactly what I went to school for. So like it's funny that like even though I did not end up doing what I thought I was going to do, I still can look back and look on those experiences and now look through a different lens. Yeah, with that knowledge.
Still utilizing it.
Exactly.
That's amazing. So nothing is wasted.
Yeah.
Do you feel like being a female business owner, how has that been? Has that been a generally good experience for you, or do you feel like there have been pieces that have been made to be harder?
That's a good question. So, for those that can't see me, I am almost 6 foot. So, I have always like carried myself in a very like broad-shouldered kind of way. And I think my personality is really strong. And I think like I've always kind of challenged authority. Like even as a kid, I was in trouble. Like I've done my, exactly. Like ask my mom. So I think for me, like if there ever was a moment where I felt like someone was talking down to me, or I think my age came into play quite a bit because I was 26 during the year that I was opening the restaurant. And so, yeah, of course, at 26, there are a lot of things that I do not know.
Right.
But then there were a lot of things where I feel like I maybe experienced, I wouldn't say it was necessarily like about being a woman though. It felt more so like about my age. But there have been moments like in the past year with the staff and things like that where like I've seen I have to kind of go at things in a different way. And I think like from a kitchen perspective, that is a predominantly male field. And so redefining kitchen culture was really important to me, and we are very much so in a PC era. And so like I think gaining respect from everybody right off the rip was like lucky, you know. I mean, if you work hard, the respect, you know, can come. But that kitchen lifestyle is challenging, and so I still it's a tough one, you know. I think that's something that will forever be difficult if you're an 80% men, 20% women like kitchen. So yeah, I would say that's probably like can be a challenge sometimes, but ultimately, like as I think if respect goes both ways, luckily I haven't had a ton of experience with it. Yeah. I don't know if I mentioned, but I'm head of the kitchen and also own the restaurant. So
you have all this time.
Yeah.
What are you doing? That's amazing. Is that, I know we've talked about hard to find balance between work and personal. Is that hard for you to find balance within the walls of the restaurant?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of my start in this restaurant world was front of house, and like I miss it all the time, but like my time is much more needed in the kitchen, and I have a passion for both. And over the last year and a half, I've gotten to experience a little bit of both. I'd say probably since the end of May, early June, so summertime is like when I took over the kitchen full time. And so, I think there are days where it is hard to find balance with both. I'm definitely learning that the way one of my staff called it the other day, there's kitchen Barbie, and then there's email Barbie, and this is, and then there's holding a front of house meeting Barbie. So yeah, there are different hats, and but I think it's kitchen season right now, but you know, I'm sure the next season's right around the corner.
Of course. Yeah. What is your favorite part of your role as the owner of Amada's Tapas?
Thinking about that one.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's pretty loaded. I'm sure it can go a lot of
I think right now my favorite part of the job has been experiencing like the planning aspect of like an event is something that like I'm really, really passionate about, because I think it gives me the opportunity to meld like all of my hats like into one. And so like I can think about like a menu for that, and then I can think about, okay, are we doing a wine pairing? And then I can think about, okay, how many people? And let's do some numbers, and let's see where this, you know, benefits them, benefits me. And I'm in the process of like promoting one of my team members to front of house manager. And that's something that like, that's a big jump, coming out of year one, but it's something that like, I'm really, really excited about doing. And when you choose to like promote somebody and grow your team in that way, like ultimately, like you're hoping it'll translate to like the business as a whole. And so, I think that's kind of like, I would say like, that's my favorite part of the job is like any sort of like planning, if it's community outreach, like this Valentine's Day event, that's something that like, I'm just so excited for. And we're like hoping to sell about 80 tickets. So potentially like something like that like we're going to really throw everything at it and do this big party and do it to the best that we possibly can. And then you just hope that it'll resonate with somebody and they think about you again in the future and want to do something else here. And so, I think that's probably my favorite as of right now. Yeah.
Now, you do have some big events. So if someone is not familiar with the Chattanooga area, how would they go about finding you?
Yeah. So as far as as an online presence, we're on Instagram at Amada Tapas, and our website is amadatapas.com. And we're located at 1413 Chestnut Street, which is going to be really, really close to Finley Stadium and across the street from 1400 Chestnut Street Apartments. Really close to where they do the, right now they've got ice skating over there, but the Chattanooga market.
It's awesome. Yeah. And super nice on Sundays when you can run to the market,
exactly.
Right? And come back.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And do people need to have a reservation if they're coming for date night?
No, I think if it's a big night, like a holiday night, so like New Year's Eve around Valentine's Day, yes, absolutely. Please put that in on Open Table, which is the application that we use for reservations. But no, we're come as you are, and it is not dress code. Obviously, we try to sell a refined dining experience, and we are pushing it as a date night, but any day of the week, kind of date night, except aside from Mondays, obviously. But
that's great. Yeah. What if they are interested in an event? I know we've talked about kind of work parties, receptions, different things.
Yeah.
Is that they need to get, and I can't even get this out, they need to get in touch with you?
Yeah.
Check the calendar? Or?
Yeah. So our email is amadatapas@gmail.com, and any inquiries for a private event can go through there, and it'll reach you directly to me.
That is awesome. Wow, I have really enjoyed getting to know you and hearing your story today, Amanda. And in closing, it would not be a traditional podcast episode of Heather's Most Precious if we didn't ask, what do you find most precious?
Oh, well, I think a summary is relationships in all aspects of life, whether it be family, friends, coworkers, employees. I think as much as you can pour into those relationships, it's the part of life that it just can stretch and spiderweb all out. And and anytime you can put positivity into those, whether it be as small as, texting that friend that you haven't talked to in 6 months, hey, thinking about you, or an employee, hey, you've been doing such a great job lately. I wanted to give you those words of affirmation. All those little things can compile into just this great, connected web of support. So that's what
we all need.
Yeah. Yes.
So needed. Well, thank you, Amanda. And y'all heard all of the ways that you can visit Amada Tapas and Wine and check out kind of all of the tapas, the small plate, right? We're always learning something new. And y'all, if you are listening, I hope that you found some encouragement within pieces of Amanda's story and the just the steps that she shared, whether you are going through a hard time, whether you feel like you are stuck in a work or school or just season of your life that you may not feel like you belong yet. And as always, we hope that you have the best week. We'll see you next week on another episode of Heather's Most Precious.
Heather's Most Precious is brought to you with love by the Hendrickson Agency, an insurance agency serving all of Georgia and Tennessee. The Hendrickson Agency, properly protecting your most precious possessions. Support for Heather's Most Precious is provided by Study.com, which offers SAT and ACT study materials and even has resources for AP and college credit courses. Listeners of Heather's Most Precious get 30% off their first 3 months of any subscription level with offer code PRECIOUS. Just go to Study.com and use offer code PRECIOUS at checkout. Heather's Most Precious is produced by Chattanooga Podcast Studios and is part of the Podnooga Network. Find out more at ChattanoogaPodcastStudios.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back soon with another episode of Heather's Most Precious.